guys, my name is Selena. We're back. Welcome to the Packed Vision podcast. I'm super excited today because I have here my friend Angel. Angel, do you remember when you posted on your Instagram that no one invites you to their podcast?
No, I do.
And what did I DM you?
You were like, hey, I'm having a podcast coming up. I really want you to be on it. I don't care what you say, because I think I said no. I said no. I was like, oh, just kidding. Like it was like a joke.
Yeah.
But then you were like, no, you're gonna be on it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, like sure. But then you were really adamant about it. I was like, okay, I'll probably do it.
Well, thank you for first officially being here. Um, I want to introduce to people this new series that I'm doing because typically I interview people on their businesses and their testimonies and how they built it. But I had a friend, my best friend David, was telling me you should start talking to people about their dreams that haven't necessarily come to pass yet. I feel like I can relate to you a lot because you're obviously in the same industry as me. But I really want to start having those conversations with people to show them how fruitful these conversations are and what can be birthed from having a conversation with someone about their purpose and their calling, but how to support people in their dreams and visions. And I think the number way we can support is not necessarily by doing something, but by just simply having a conversation and showing interest and that you care. Um, so I feel like we've had some conversations where I see in you that I'm like, oh, I know Angel has some gold hidden up in there and I'm ready to unlock it. Guys, Angel, he's going to share with you his vision, but he has a lot in store. I believe in him. I believe in your vision, your purpose, and your calling. You're so much more than just a videographer, and a videographer is already needed in this time and age, but what you have to offer is much more than you can even imagine, than I can even imagine. So let's talk about it. I felt like we should have started recording in the car already because Angel was dropping freaking nuggets, and I was like, dude, hold on, save it all for the podcast. But he says he can remember it all. So maybe just start off by sharing a little bit of your background, what you do, and then we'll get into what we were talking about in the car.
Yeah. I guess starting off, from I guess 13 years old, I started watching like these YouTube videos, started getting like really interested into like YouTube space. A lot of like creators I was watching, I was like, whoa, this like they're making like nothing and making it interesting. That was something that I felt like was super interesting to me. Back then I was like, they're literally recording like their daily lives, or like they're from a small town and just like they're making the most out of what they have with just like photos and videos and stuff. That was like super interesting to me, for them to just like create something special with just a camera.
Yeah.
So I started falling in love with it, and then when I was like 14 years old, so it was about a year just like watching videos, consuming content. Then when I was 14, my brother bought me a camera, and that really just changed everything from then on. He said he saw like, I guess, the passion that I had for just cameras and filmmaking in general. He didn't really understand it, but he just saw like the fire, I guess, in my eyes or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm super grateful for that. Like, if my brother never bought me that camera, I don't think I'd be here today. Truly, like that camera has been the key to everything, really. Right after school, I'd film all day, shoot all day, and then I'd come home, um, sometimes like at 4 a.m. And then I go to school like in 2 hours. Just because I knew that I saw this one YouTuber, and I used to just watch like a bunch of videos on how to improve camera and stuff like that. And so one of the YouTubers I watched, he was like, hey, and this is like one of the best like advice I always give people for like filming or just anything with cameras, is that before you take good photos, you have to take bad ones. That is like fundamentally true. You have to go through that phase where you're just like, everything you take is so bad. So that's kind of like the foundation of like, I guess the how my backstory started with cameras and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Then I started to pick up clients after about a year. I ended up getting a few like decent clients in the local area, just like doing film stuff with like gyms and stuff like that. My brother, I would shoot. I used to make a lot of YouTube videos, mainly was what I was doing
Yeah.
for myself. Just random videos. I would just like go around while I was taking photos, just film it,
Yeah.
like a little adventure vlog, like stuff like this. Honestly, like go out in nature and just film it. With some of my friends at the time. After about like editing for a few people, I started to get really good. And people started to notice that. So one of the videos that I edited for the Ball Brothers, um, a video company saw that, and they're like, "Hey, did you edit this video for the Ball Brothers?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that was me."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, we want to offer you a position."
Yeah.
I was like, "Whoa!" I was like 15 at the time, so I was like, I didn't even really understand like how much money that could be made.
Yeah.
I just did it because I loved it.
At 15.
Yeah, no, I just did it because I loved it. I was like, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah.
So I remember that I got that position, and I was just so excited. I told my parents, I'm like, "Hey, I need you to sign this like job offer I got, this like contract, because I was under 18." So they had to sign off on it. They were like super skeptical about it. They saw the amount of money I was making, and they're like, "Okay," because before there was a lot of like pushback.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing great in school. Struggled a lot in school actually. I would say, but I would because I was always just doing video,
Yeah.
always just doing video. So I I showed them the money
Yeah.
and like the contract, and that was real. I showed them the company, and they're like, okay. They finally like agreed to it. I remember I went in their bed at like or into their room at like 3 in the morning because that's when I got the contract officially. I showed it to them, and they're so tired. I woke them up for it. They're so mad, but um, they saw the passion behind it. They saw that I was actually making money, so they agreed to it. And from then on, like that's really just like how it started.
It's literally what ignited your whole career at 15. I want to go into a lot of things that you mentioned. You mentioned there was pushback. You mentioned you struggled in school. You mentioned you didn't even start this business. It just kind of started off on its own. And you mentioned that your brother believed in you and you never would have been here if it wasn't for him. And so I really want to touch base on those topics because I feel like those are really important to talk about. I want to go, let's rewind back to school and how you said that you would struggle. I remember being in school and being like, okay, I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to be a nurse. I like, I don't know what I want to be, but I feel like I can't really relate to anyone. And I never felt smart enough to be like, oh, I want to be a teacher or because I struggled in school. I struggled in math. Um, I wasn't confident in that area. And so I always felt like, well, what is it that I'm going to be? Like, I kind of never really had those conversations with my friends growing up. They would all say they want to be teachers and stuff. How did you feel? Because at the time, I don't think I knew what a creative was, what an entrepreneur was, a visionary. That wasn't really spoken about growing up, especially if you're not really surrounded by that environment. Did you know what you wanted to be when you were younger, or like how did you navigate that?
Yeah, no, that was like one of the I would say like the pivotal moments in my life. I would say because there was so much pushback, so much. That was a huge wall. The school was a huge wall, and it's crazy because I don't even think about it now.
Yeah.
But back then, that was the biggest obstacle I had, and I think with school is like very similar to what you were saying. Like I didn't really see myself as becoming, a doctor, a lawyer, anything where it was like a 9 to 5, like in the office. I didn't see myself in that environment. Um, where I was like working in an office or anything like that. So explaining that to my parents at first was very difficult because they just saw like me just taking pictures and like going out. Like they didn't think it could be something that I can make money from. That was just the biggest thing was like hey but you gonna how are you gonna make money from it though?
Yeah.
So like once I started showing them, it's almost like a step-by-step process that I had to do in order to make it a reality.
Yeah.
The first step was really just like convincing my parents that it was a real thing and I could make money from it and it was like sustainable. So that was the first step I took was convincing my parents. And once I showed them the money coming in from it, they were like, okay, we believe you. We're gonna support you in any way we can. And that really just like that meant a lot.
Yeah.
And once I had my parents' backing and support, that's all I needed. I'll be honest, there was a lot of extended family members that didn't. I was honestly like kind of like mocked, like looked down upon within my family. So that was like really tough to see that.
Is it because did you have entrepreneurs in your family? Do you feel like it was unfamiliar to them?
Yeah.
Which is why it could have been like mocked, looked down upon, disbelief.
Yeah, no, that's where a lot of it comes from, is that no one in our family really has done anything like that.
Yeah.
So they didn't understand it really. And I think it's a lot of like what I learned is that it's really just them. It's not me. It's just something that they're like projecting. They're projecting themselves on me, and like that was one of the biggest lessons I learned was that it wasn't me. It's more them.
Yeah.
So I actually distanced myself while I was trying to make things work, going through the process. So once I went over that first hurdle, the next step was school. And in that process with school was obviously there's a lot of legalities. Like I really wanted to drop out
Of high school?
of high school.
Really?
I wanted to drop out of high school. I actually took
Because you already knew what you wanted to do.
I already knew what I wanted to do and I was so focused, honed in on that. I had my parents backing me, so I was like, I'm gonna just do it. I wanted to be I just want to make videos.
Yeah.
So what I did is the same year that I basically got the job, I tried to take the exit exam for high school. And I was 2 math questions away from passing it.
No.
2 math questions.
It's those math questions.
Yeah.
We
So
can't even drop out.
yeah, no, so I was 2 questions away from graduating like I think it was like sophomore summer.
Yeah.
So the summer of sophomore year, I could have 2 math questions away from graduating.
Dang.
Yeah. But during that time, it was after that, right? After I did that, I was really sad, but I was like, okay, whatever. I just gotta keep going. So I was working for a bit, still at that one company, and then I went into what it's called. Like I had a lot of meetings with my counselor.
Yeah.
I was like, how can I expedite this process of me getting out of school early? Like, is there anything I could do? And my counselor at the time, I think she was really worried for me about my future, and like I think that's the main reason behind it. But there was a lot of pushback with my counselor. She actually like I'll never forget it. What she told me. She told me that she would never hire me as a video person ever.
Really?
Ever. She owned a local gym, and she said that 'cause she knew I did videos and stuff for local people, and she said like she would never hire me. I guess my attitude towards school, she didn't like it, so she thought that I was I guess like a brat, and based off that, she didn't want to hire me. But in reality, it's just like I just felt so much like restrictive. I was just so restricted on time and working on my crafts. I couldn't focus on school. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
So
You were, like in the future. You
yeah,
were looking ahead.
yeah. So just trying to speed it up. Basically, what happened? I went to what is it called? Independent study. I went to independent study. I did all my classes. I graduated. I think in about 2 months. So I was in the middle of my junior year. Oh no, started senior year. I started senior year in high school, and I went into independent study. I finished all my classes in 2 months. Cause I got a call from one of my best friends. Like I would say my best friend. He told me about a position that he had at a company. Basically, I work full time as a video producer for them, and I was like, whoa, I'm there. But he told me the only thing I had to do was I couldn't be in school. So I had to figure out how to graduate in about honestly it was like less. I had to graduate in a month so I could be ready to take the position.
No way.
Or else I wasn't gonna get it. So I was like, okay, I gotta do it. So I had to basically I had to get permission from like the state, like someone very high up in the school board. I had to have an appointment with him for him to allow me to take more credits at one time than you're allowed to for a student. So he was very impressed with me and like how I spoke to him. I broke it down. Very understanding guy. It's awesome. He's super dope. But he let me take all my senior classes that I had left and then some because I failed some in the past. So I had to take about, I don't even know, it was a lot of classes I had to take
You
because
did it.
I failed a lot of classes. So I did like maybe about 8 classes in a month.
And you graduated early. No way. Wait, what age is this?
I was just in 17. So
This is, I knew it. I knew it. I saw something in you. I was like, we're going to have him on the podcast. That's crazy. I wish I would have known how to do that. But guys, hold on. I need to highlight something. I didn't know that Angel's freaking 21. We were in the car and I was telling him how back in the day my mom used to buy me these little Canon cameras. I was like, you know, the ones that you use on MySpace? He goes, oh, I wasn't there in that era. And I looked at him, I was like, excuse me? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, how old are you? He's like, I'm 21. I'm 27. I don't like these moments because they make me feel old, but oh well. Anyways, you got out of high school. I give you props for doing that because obviously that takes a lot of like motivation. It takes focus. It takes discipline. I don't think I had that in high school, but I also still wasn't aware of the gifts or the calling that I had. So I feel like you got to unpack that at a very young age. And that's so cool. So now, when we talk about these other plans that you have for your life, I have like no doubt about it. Like, Angel has the qualities that it takes. And sometimes those qualities look like isolation and focus and discipline. Um, but it's funny that you had this conversation with your parents about dropping out because I finished high school, but I dropped out of college. But I never had a conversation with my mom. And I feel like I can kind of relate to you because you said that a lot of your extended family members didn't believe or were mocking the situation. Nobody did that in my family, but I don't think I thought anybody would really understand what it is that I'm gonna do. So I kind of just dropped out of college and didn't say nothing and just worked. And my mom ended up telling me like, "Don't think I didn't notice that you stopped going to school." And I'm like, "Well, why didn't you say anything? So we could talk about it now, you know?" And she tells me because I saw how focused and determined you were and you weren't like lazy. You didn't just sit there and do nothing, but I think she always saw something in me the way that your brother saw something in you at a young age. But it's like, how do you really have that conversation as a parent? Because you don't want your kid to drop out of college, especially if you look at, sorry, this is the perks of wanting to be outside. There's bugs. Um, Especially the older generation, like my mom's generation, generations above that, they weren't talked to about these things like, oh, you can be a creative, you could be an entrepreneur, drop out. That's very risky. And I think that even your parents being like, wait, Like, let me see this contract. Like, show me. Moral of the story is I think that actions speak louder than words when it comes to pursuing your purpose and your calling. I think less talking is better. It's a good way to guard your heart because you want to share the vision with people who believe in it, like your parents and your brother. The extended people don't, the noise is unnecessary to hear because there's already going to be so many distractions. There's already going to be so much discouragement out there. Sometimes you have to just lock in, focus, and believe that whatever God has put in your heart and the skills that He's given you, that you can do it, right? Yeah. And I feel like that's what you did. You believed that you could do it. Was there times that you felt like, maybe I can't do this, and didn't really share it with anyone? I'm sure there was times where it got hard or there was people better than you. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, that honestly it happened. It kind of going like chronological order actually. It's funny. So after I basically went to that job, I got the job,
Yeah.
and oh my god, it was like the best year of my life. Best year of my life. But something one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned was during that job. Um, and it brings me back to like a couple lessons, honestly. The biggest one was I settled in to this position I was in. I got comfortable. That's the word. I got comfortable. And but at the end of the year, we were only actually signed for a year. That was how long the contract was. But what ended up happening towards the end of the contract was a lot of our peers, they got renewals on their contracts, or they got promotions, or they got a bonus. A lot of them. So me and my friends, we thought, we're like, oh, we're gonna get a bonus when, because everyone was having meetings, right, with the higher ups, and we're like, oh, we're gonna have a meeting, we're gonna get our bonus. I'm like, we started talking to each other, like, oh, what are you gonna spend your bonus on? I'm like, man, I don't know. I think I'm gonna get some new lights or something. I'm gonna get like a new battery, or whatever the case is, right? Just talking about anything. And we ended up having the meeting, and we ended up getting dropped.
Laid off.
We got laid off. They told us we're not getting a renewal or anything. That was heartbreaking. We got dropped in like a Jersey Mike's.
In Jersey Mike's?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a trigger.
Yeah, they told us, they're like, hey, they're getting let go. The end of the season for the players that we were recording, it's there. We're dropping that team too. So there's no team to film, so we gotta let you go. So that was heartbreaking, and especially for me. And immediately I felt a lot of regret at that time, because I felt like, and going back to your question, there's a reason I brought it all up. I was compared to a lot to my friend in the job. I got brought on because they thought I could replicate what he could do. They think you could copy what he could do. I'm like, yeah, I think so. So, imposter syndrome, like a big one, is like thinking you're not good enough, but as other people. I started looking at my friend and be like, damn, I don't think I could do what he does. A lot of other people, I started applying to other positions in the industry that I was in, and it was esports. Um, and a lot of the other teams, like, I don't think I was good enough. I think that's just the reality of it. I wasn't I wasn't good enough for a lot of the other teams that I was applying to, and I couldn't get a position. I couldn't get any position. So that really hit me, because I felt like after the fact, I felt like I didn't do enough in the position that I was given, in the opportunity that I was given. I didn't do enough. I didn't hone in my skills. I got comfortable. I was like, oh, I'm gonna ride this position out for years. Um, and one of the things that I learned was definitely not to be comfortable. Always try to do better in any position that you're in, constantly. Try to always be uncomfortable. So that's the biggest lesson I learned in that. But another one I learned was super early on. I didn't understand it at the time, but it was something my dad told me when he was coming back. He used to work two jobs. He used to work 2 jobs. He worked during the day. Oh no, he would sleep during the day and then work at night. And then he had another job that he would go to. But basically, um, he came back from work in the his day job. He came back. I only saw him for an hour. It was like right before my bedtime. I stood up a little bit early too, just to see him. And he came in. He walked in the house and he came up to me and he was like, "Hey, I what I'm doing right now. I don't want you to work as hard as I do right now." And that really stood out to me. And also another thing he said was, "Don't ever settle." That was like the biggest game changer. After I got dropped off, I basically dropped. I don't know why, but that I remember that trigger. It's a pillar for me now, really. It's to never settle. I don't ever want to be, because I remember how that felt. I felt so helpless because I there was nothing I could do now because I couldn't go back in time and work harder. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
So looking forward, I was like, I'm not gonna make that same mistake. I don't want to be in a position where I take it for granted and I don't work hard enough. Because that's what I did. I took my position, my opportunity for granted, and I didn't work hard enough. And that's something I teach a lot of people. Um, Whether it's me giving them the opportunity or they just get a really good opportunity, the one thing I tell people is like, hey man, like, just don't settle.
Yeah.
Just don't settle, because the moment you get comfortable is when not only other people, they pass you up and they start doing better, but if something happens and now you don't like requalify you're not at a competitive skill level in your industry, you're gonna have a hard time getting a position.
I think that's something too that I learned because I used to work for a marketing agency. What I'm taking though from that was another thing that I could have paid attention to, that you could have paid attention to, because I wasn't familiar with contracts. I wasn't, we think long term. We're excited, we're young. We're like, this is it. I'm going to be here forever. So I get where that's the comfortability, the settling, but nobody talks about how to protect yourself in a contract. You're not thinking a year from now. You're thinking you're still going to be Gucci, but to already pre-plan, okay, what's next? And I feel like you have that skill now where you're at based off of how we talk and what you tell me. And I kind of want to go into talking about the goals that you've shared with me now, that I don't think that you've shared with a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you can share however much you want to, but you are so beyond a contract now in your mind. So right now you have clients on retainer. You're already beyond that in your mind. You've told me your goals, your dreams years from now. You've told me like 3 of them, and it's like longevity. And I think that's important to have. Have you ever written those down?
Yeah, no, I write them down every day. It's something I didn't really it just hit me one day.
How recent was that?
So I had about 10 years planned, and like really kind of planned out. But I would say honestly, like probably a month ago is when I had like a trigger, not a trigger, but like a moment of like clarity that came to me, and I realized that what I really enjoy like just talking about is like I love how learning about how people work, how we can I guess just better help each other and ourselves. I guess just like human psychology, and like yeah, I guess just like psychology in general. I just really kind of felt a love for that.
Do you remember where you were at when you got that vision download?
Oh yeah, I was in my room. I was watching a video about Shaq.
Chat.
Yeah, it's really funny. So it's basically a video about Shaq and all the stuff he does. He does like a bunch of different ads and sponsorships for so many different companies, but one of the things I didn't know about was that he's actually a doctor.
Really?
Shaq is a doctor. So he went to school during his whole time in the NBA, or I think maybe a couple years in. I believe he went to school during his time in the NBA, and he got his doctorate.
In what? Do you know in what?
It's like something with social science, something like that. So in the kind of the same genre, a little bit same space. But that's something that stood out to me. I was like, whoa, if he could be an NBA player, playing at the top of the NBA and still go to school and still be accomplished in that area, I was like, why can't I do that? Why not me? So I guess talking about going into what I was talking about with you, as we just came out of that one shoot we did with Pablo,
Yeah.
um, I guess it's like kind of like a three career.
Yeah.
I learned that most people have about three different careers in their lifetime. And I believe the first career of mine was video. That's the first one.
And that's what he's doing right now.
And that's what I'm doing right now. And oh, sorry. And now going into my second career, right? Which is gonna be like real estate, financial services, that kind of space, right? Um, that's gonna be like my next career,
Okay.
and I'm gonna be doing that from about like my 20s to about. I mean, I could kind of go long term with it, like maybe into my 40s, 30s.
Yeah, like we'll see. Wherever.
It really just depends, but I would say into my late 30s. That's what I'm kind of envisioning. So into my late 30s, I'm gonna be doing that, working full time, doing that the whole time. But I have a vision where after I make my first million inside of real estate, I'm gonna go into school. So I'm gonna work towards that third career. So by the time I'm already kind of like, okay, like I've done what I need to do to build generational wealth for my family. So now my kids are set up in a way that we're not worried, we're not going check to survive. We have financial freedom,
Yeah.
right? That's something that's huge for me.
Yeah.
So um going to that third career, I believe I'm gonna try to get my PhD in I want to be a doctor in psychology.
I love
Something in that space. I haven't thought about exactly what yet, but I know that's something that I want to get into, and that'll be my third career is like being a psychiatrist.
that. Now, how many people have you shared this with?
Really, not a lot. I didn't even realize. I didn't even tell my mom. I think I told you before I told my mom.
And why do you think you told me first before your mom?
Um, I love my parents and I love my mom, but I don't think they still have a hard time understanding entrepreneurship and I guess kind of like the path that I'm on. It's a little hard to understand sometimes.
Yeah.
Just because like they didn't. That's not how they grew up. It's very
Right.
hard to grasp them sometimes.
Yeah.
So speaking to fellow entrepreneurs, fellow creators, they understand it and they really hear you out. Because like my mom she'll listen, but it's like I don't think she'll understand it fully.
Yeah, and I don't think you went with the intent like I'm not gonna tell my mom. It's just like you're like I'm figuring this out, and we just happen to be talking about this. But I'm glad that we talked about it because now we're putting it out there. And when you put it out there and you share it with people that not only believe in you, but are on the same path of like self discovery, growth, walking in their calling, I believe we create this space of accountability. So now every time I see you, since we've talked, I would say like, oh hey, are you still taking your real estate license? Like I'm just all up in his business now. But it's because you've shared the vision now and I believe in it. So I'm gonna check up on you. I'm gonna ask you, what are you doing? Are you still on it? Like how are you doing? Because right now you're still in your career of videography and I know how time demanding that is. Um, so I hope you know my heart when I ask you. I'm not just trying to be nosy, but I think that that's how we should be with one another. Even with one of the projects I'm working on, you're like, oh, hey, where is it at? You know? And I'm like, it's on its way, you know? I think these are good conversations to have with one another. Um, that's cool. I'm excited. So, what are you going to do, or what are the steps that you're taking right now to be in real estate? Like, what's your plan? Because we could talk about the dream, we could talk about the vision, we could talk about how you're going to make $1 million, but what are you going to do to get yourself closer to that dream?
It's getting realized and put together really from my brother. And again, my brother, like he's really blessing me with the opportunity to make it so easy for me to transition. Um, and I can't get into like too much because like it's kind of like he doesn't share a lot of the vision with others, but like kind of like people inside of it who are actually gonna work on it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be respectful for him,
Yeah.
but it kind of sounds like a cop out, but he's really like dialed into what he's building, and basically I'm just gonna help him build it out together. Where it's something we've been talking about honestly for like it's been like 2 years in the making.
But that's so cool because he trusts you so much with the vision, and because of that now you're willing to help build the vision with him. That's why it's important to share your vision with people who are in your safe space. That's why you're like, I'm not going to share it, because I think that there should be some type of boundary when it comes to your vision. We were talking about boundaries in the car. Not everyone's going to get it, and you still have to protect it. So I respect that.
It's just going into a more personal aspect, kind of bringing it away from like work and career. One of the biggest, if you met me before, I'd say COVID. I'm a very different person pre-COVID to after COVID. Foundationally, I'm still there,
Yeah.
but surface level, I think very different. How I am outside, I think it's a reflection of how I am inside. Um, Especially now. How I was before was very I wasn't structured. I wasn't aligned really.
Yeah.
I honestly I didn't think I shared this with you, but I recently shared this with my brother and Steven, and in 2021 was probably the hardest year of my life. The lowest point. I just got dropped from the team. I lost a lot of close people at the time during COVID, and it was like my lowest point. And that's this kind of like where my testimony comes from. I got a vision from God, and he really just spoke to me when I was just at the lowest point in my life, and he told me that, well, he gave me the purpose and the assignment to help others. That really is just what the assignment he gave me. At the end of the day, he really just gave me the sign to, with whatever industry you're in, with whatever you are as a being, I just try to help others at the end of the day. That's something I really just took to heart because as soon as I started focusing on that, helping others, I noticed that he was blessing me. He really was blessing me. Um, I after because like during COVID, I really struggled like with clients. I couldn't figure out why too. I was like, what is going on? Like I can't get clients. My portfolio is strong. I felt like I was overqualified for a lot of the stuff that I was applying for, but I wasn't getting anything. And as soon as I started making it for them and not myself, that's when I noticed a big change. And I started getting clients. I started doing really well. Um, I started to align myself to the assignment at Tim Story. But that was really just a big part in that. And then also a big part was turning my pain into purpose. The pain that I felt from all the misfortune that I was going through at the time of 2021. I turned that into a purpose and I put it into my business. I started doing it for others instead of myself. Because really, what I was doing it for before all that happened was I was doing it on my plan. When I, and then God, he took it away. He's like, no, you should be doing it for God's plan, not my plan, right? So as soon as I started doing it for Him and not for myself, that's when I noticed such a big change, really. And that's not something I really share with a lot of people, but that moment was such a defining moment in my life because that showed me that really just showed me my purpose. And ever since then, I've been aligned to that assignment the most that I can. I will be honest. I do stray off of it sometimes, but he's quick to correct me.
Right.
I'll lose a client or I'll have something unfortunate happen, and it's like a test. I believe it's like a test.
Yeah.
Say, hey, you're starting to go off and you're starting to do it your way. He's like, no, you gotta stay aligned to your assignment.
Yeah.
So
Wow, that's good. Dude, I feel like you just dropped the mic. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's gonna help a lot of people because like I told Angel on the way here, fun fact, my first YouTube video I ever made was here in Mount Baldy, but I was making vlogs, not knowing with the intention, but it was technically for myself and about myself. And I wasn't consistent with it. And now we're back here like 5 years later in Mount Baldy making a video for Packed Vision, not because it's not for me, it's for God's plan. And it's to speak to people like you and me, speak to people who need to hear about how to discover their purpose and their calling. And these pivotal moments in your life that you just shared is going to change someone's life. It can help some. You were watching a video of Shaq, and God gave you a vision of your life plan. That's how powerful a video can be. And so I just want to thank you for coming on here. We could probably talk till it's like pitch dark. Yeah. Hopefully you guys can still see us right now. But Angel, I appreciate it. Thank you for agreeing to my crazy idea. I wanted to be by the water.
yeah, no, I love it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, he gets it. I don't even have to explain it. But the reason why I always want to be outside is because this is my piece. God created all of this. He's the most creative person you can think of. He created us. And so it's funny too because we're by water, and it reminds me of the scripture, like he will literally sit you by water and you just feel this peace. And I feel at peace knowing about everything that you shared today. And I know that everything you talked about today is going to come to pass. It might not be easy. There's going to be more lessons to share, but I'm going to be here rooting for you. And I know that God's going to be your rock.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah.
It means a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Is there any last words you want to say?
Um, last words about career, like anything.
Anything on your heart.
I think just like really align yourself to the assignment that God gives you. That's when everything changes. Um, and just honestly, you just have to put the work in. A lot of people recently, I see a lot where they just don't put the work in, and they really, I think the big thing, more than anything, is that I noticed a big change in myself is when I started to hang out around people that I wanted to be like.
Yes.
Um, Power association is like literally the number one. If you want to change your life, I believe you first need to change the people you're surrounded by. 100%. Like that makes such a big difference. I noticed that that was the first thing I changed, and it makes it so much easier to be around people who you want to be like in the
Yeah.
future, around good-hearted people. Um, that's really just what makes the biggest difference in just life in general.
It does, because your brother was such a big influence, he was being influenced by other people that he looked up to, and it was like an overflow. Yeah. There was an outpour. Yeah. Like because he put in the work, he got to share that with you, and you get to share that with somebody else. Do you see how it's never ending? And that's why it's important to surround yourself with people that are in rooms like that, educating themselves, investing in themselves. So that is good. Thank you for sharing that. All right, thank you guys for watching.